To begin your digital collage, you're going to go into your drive and then start a new Google Drawings. So it's in the uh, new menu and then drop down over to more, and then it's there. And you can title it whatever you'd like. Digital collage. And you're doing a landscape again. So you're going to need to have defined foreground, middle ground, and background areas. The background is pretty easy because you can just choose a color and fill that in and kind of get that started right away. So that's what I'm going to do is right click on my mouse and then go to the background. And you can either do a gradient or you could do a solid. It's up to you. I'm going to do a gradient. I'm going to do kind of darker purple. And my sample one that I did was kind of an under the sea theme. So I'll click over to here. So it was this one I did with the fish and the crabs and the seaweed. And the one I'm going to do for this video is going to be kind of like a starry night scene. So you need to have a, something that's going to happen in your sky, and then your foreground, your middle ground, and your background is just this going to be your color. So you don't have to add anything additionally to kind of get your background area completed. So I'm going to add in uh, I'm going to do my masked shapes first, because you need to be able to find an image online and then mask it into a particular shape. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to do that for the stars and for the moon. So I'm going to insert and I'm going to find an image, and you search the web. And you don't have to have, like, I can do a star shape with a star design, or you can choose a different kind of background if you want for your collage. But I'm going to just keep it with like some kind of star pattern. Okay. I want it to stand out from my background, so I want to choose something a little bit brighter. I think I like this one up here. Okay, so I'm going to choose that. I'm going to insert it. And I want it to be in a star shape. So I'm going to go over to my crop image tool, and there's a drop down menu here. And when you hover over it, you'll see, go back there again, make sure that's highlighted. So crop, and I kind of hover over this, and it says mask image when you hover over the arrow. So I'm going to click on the arrow, and you have all these kinds of shapes that you can do as options for your masking. So let's see here. There is a star. Okay, and if you move it from the corner, it moves in proportion. I can kind of stretch this down a tiny bit. I can turn it. Now it's going to have no outline as is. As you can see, there's no outline on my star. But if you wanted to kind of highlight it a little bit more, you could outline it. So I'm going to create a border. I'm just going to do 2 point, and I'm going to have it be a yellow color so it stands out. Okay, and that is how you mask one of the items in your design, in your collage. So I'm going to copy this. I don't want to have to make it again, so I'm just going to highlight the whole thing, copy, paste, and now I have this same shape, and I can, I can still reduce it down. I can turn its direction and paste it again. Right. So if you have something that you want to repeat, like this is what I did for the seaweed on my original, or on the fish, if you have one thing that you make, you can multiply it without having to remake the whole thing. Do one more. Now, if you want to change your pattern, you'd have to make the star again. But I'm okay with the pattern that I have for these stars, so I'm just going to keep it as is. Then I want to do the moon. So I'm going to insert image, search the web. And that's, I'm not going to, well, let's see here. Let me see if I find the moon. Moon texture. I really want that kind of crater texture. There we go. So something like this, insert it, and then go to my mask shapes and find the crescent, which is here. And if I want to flip the direction, I can just do something like that. Put him up here. I want it stretched out, but I want it smaller. All right, so you see, you really can really kind of play with that to get the appropriate size that works for your work. All right, so I have my items that are masked, and this would all kind of still be considered part of the background. So I'm going to start to work in my foreground first, and then I'll start to work in the middle ground. So I'm just going to do kind of like a forest scene here. So I'm going to I've fulfilled my requirement for masking, but I still want to use something that I can find. Um, oops, I can find from search the web. I'm going to look for a grass texture. If you do texture or pattern, you end up kind of with more options, I think, for the, you know, the stuff that you might want to be using for the ground, for the sky. It kind of looks a little bit more realistic than just kind of putting in a green box. I like this one. Lots of texture there. All right, it's already a rectangle. So I'm just going to kind of put it right in the bottom. Stretch this out. And if you need to, you know, shorten or expand your workspace, you do that by pulling the corner. You can see these like little arrow, these little lines show up here. All right, and then the next thing I'm going to do is add some mountains. So that I'm just going to insert as a shape. I'm not going to mask that. So I'm going to look for the triangle. So I'm going to do mountains and then I'm going to do hills. And I don't want them to all be perfect. So I'm going to have them kind of leaning. And if you copy it, you can still kind of change it a little bit. Like I can widen this one. And I want this to be coming like from the background, like coming from the image. So I'm going to have it a little bit cut off on the side of the workspace. And when I download it, it will just look like it's kind of coming into the picture. And then another. And this one can kind of be off the workspace that way. All right, and you can decide which one you want to kind of have in the front or which one you want to have in the back. So I'm going to color these first. And I'm going to do a gradient. And I want a light violet. I'm going to go to custom. Don't want them to be transparent, so I'm going to make sure that that's checked. Okay. I'll do it for this one. Now my gradient that I just made, it shows up on my menu, but I want to make a different shade of purple. So do here. And then for my last one. Now these have a very pronounced black outline, which I don't want, so I'm going to actually get rid of that. So I'm going to click on my pen tool and then make this transparent. And then it makes that black outline disappear. I don't want things in the background to be outlined. That's just me. If you want things in your background to be outlined, that's totally fine. It's just I'm just not really wanting that for my mountains. All right, so I have so these will be part of my middle ground area. I want little hills in front of the mountains, so I'm gonna add that in. And a hill shape that I think would work the best would be maybe one of these shapes. What else? This could work, the chord shape. See any of the call outs? None of the equations. All right, so I'm gonna go with this, the chord. Then just rotate that. Once again, I kind of want it coming off the edge. Stretched out a little. And you see I did kind of play with this a tiny bit. I'm gonna just tuck it right onto the grass, and I'm gonna change the orientation of the grass in a little bit, so this way you won't see the bottom of those hills. This one I want to be smaller. And then I'm going to make my last one kind of go really small, like it's receding into the distance. All right, so we haven't talked yet about grouping, but I want all of these hills to kind of connect so that they look like they're one continuous piece. And if I move them, I can move them around together as a unit versus having to move them all separately. So I'm going to click on the first one, and then I'm going to hit Control and click on everything I want to include in my grouping. And I'm going to go to Arrange and Group. And now these hills, click on them. Do that again. Yeah, you can see they can move them like all at once. Okay, so I'm going to color them in. Do a gradient again. I want to get a brown, which is usually kind of in the red family. So you have to kind of go to the red and then look between the red and the black, and there's usually more brown tones. And I'm just going to repeat that same gradient, which I have in my chart now. Right, and same thing, I don't want the outline, so I'm going to make that transparent. And you could do this all before you copy and paste. It's just that I usually like to see the shape first, and then I kind of see what I want to do for color and outlining. So I'm probably taking more time than I need to, but all right, now I want the grass to kind of come right up against those hills. So I'm going to change the arrangement. So you see how my grass is highlighted. I'm going to arrange, order, bring to front. All right, and now my grass is looking like it's coming up right to the hills, which is what I want because my grass should really be the horizon line in my landscape. All right, so you could add at this point some things in the foreground, trees, animals. I made the crab. When I did this, I just combined some shapes. The same thing with the fish. I just combined shapes. But you need to make the polyline tool, or you need to be able to use the polyline tool. So I'm going to use that for some of my tree shapes. So I'm going to go up to here, go to polyline, and I'm just going to make a really loose kind of like pine tree shape. So I'm just going to click. I'm not worried about this being perfect or symmetrical, but you do want to make sure that it closes. So how it's like a closed shape, because then when I can go to fill it in, it fills in completely. And these I am going to leave outlined because they're kind of a prominent thing in my foreground. And then I can go back to the polyline, can draw in the trunk. So once again, just make sure that it's closed. And I want this shape to be. And then if you need to get out of the polyline, just go back to the selector tool. Now I can copy and paste, so I can group this tree. So I have this top part, control, add the trunk, arrange, group. Now I can copy my whole tree and paste in hundreds of trees if I wanted to. And smaller, make them kind of look like in the distance. And that's what I did for my seaweed. If they're a little bit higher on the horizon line, they're going to look further in the back. So that means that they should be smaller. So this would be like the most distant tree that I have. I can make this tree a little bit larger. Okay, so you don't have to keep kind of reinventing the wheel. You can really make a couple items and then just copy and paste them to kind of fill in your design. I'm going to add snow to the top of my mountain, so I'm going to use the polyline for that. So just kind of outline the edge of my mountain. Click. I'm going to fill that in with white. I don't want it outlined. And then back to my selector tool. And now I'm just going to copy and paste that on top of my other mountains. I can just stretch it out a little bit. If you need to see stuff too more clearly, so right now that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Right, and I can kind of get a better sense of how my snow will fit. Okay, with that, and then paste it again. I could do it here and stretch out this one pretty significantly. All right, and then I'm going to zoom. Back to regular. Okay, and I do want to put in, I've met all the criteria for the drawing. I've used masking, I've used the polyline tool, I've, have my elements, part of my landscape. I have a foreground, middle ground, and background. I just want to add in another element. I'm going to make a rabbit just to kind of sit in the front in my foreground. Animals are not required, or people are not required for this, but just to kind of add one more kind of focal point here. So I'm going to insert a shape. I want to pick a color for him. Really just using circles for all the parts. And I'm going to zoom in because this is getting small. I'm going to use that shape for the ears too. Use this inside shape. And then for the eyes, I'm just going to double up the circles. So I'll make one. All right, I'm going to group this eye. So click on the white. Hopefully this works. Copy the whole thing. Paste the whole thing. And then for his nose, I'm going to do a triangle. And you could even draw a mouth. Actually, I don't want polyline this time. I want just a line. That should be pink. All right, so I'm going to go to my line tool right here. Almost. Click too fast. And then I'm going to put in a tail. It's going to be kind of hiding in the corner, so I will I'm going to send it to the back. Oop. Not that far back because then it ends up behind the grass. Take my bunny and bring him to the front instead. Let's see here. Let's group. We'll figure this out. There we go. Right now, let's see here. Bring body to front. Bring the head to front. There we go. And now the tail is in the back. Sometimes you just have to kind of think about the order of things. I'm going to zoom out again. There we go. All right, so foreground, middle ground, background, polyline items, masked items, use of color, the use of shape, a focal point, and it demonstrates a landscape. So I'm going to download this as you could do a JPEG or a PNG. Make sure you don't do a PDF because then it won't upload to Jamboard. I'm going to save it. When you open it, as you can see, these edges get cleaned up. So all that stuff that was kind of sticking off the edge, that is going to be um, not as, that's going to be cleaned up. And my grass also kind of gets a little bit cleaned up when I was doing the Google drawing, it had gotten compressed, but now you can see the texture a little bit more clearly. So then this is what you would save and then upload it to Jamboard and to Google Classroom.